Hello, everybody. Happy Friday. Welcome to Cub Chat Live. You know me, I'm Gina. And you know this guy, this is Anthony. He's the director of Cub Scouts. We are talking about a topic that I think the Boy Scouts of America does a great job with this. This is kind of our bread and butter. We're talking safety today. We'll get more into that in just a second. I want to say hello to all of the councils that we are cross-posting this stream to. If you would like to join the conversation live, hop on over to Scouting Magazine and watch there, or stay right where you are. Enjoy the show. You can sit back, relax. And this show will stay up on whichever page you're watching it on after the show is live, so you can share it with other folks. If you don't want to take notes, maybe you want to refer something back in the show, you can. Facebook.com/Scouting Magazine is one place where this video will live on. Shout out to all of you guys. Please leave comments along with the show. Anthony, safety. Well, I mean, why is safety so important to units?
Well, we kind of lead with safety, but in some of the promotions for today's show, we talked about building your program or planning your program with confidence. And for me, that confidence in building your program, especially when we've got lots of new leaders, we got tons of new leaders, we got tons of new den leaders, we got tons of new cub masters, and they're all probably in the season of they maybe have just done their first event or they're about to plan their first event, and they're a little nervous. I know I was, as first time cub master, our first camp out, I was anxious, I was nervous, but what gave me confidence is having that checklist of knowing that, okay, here are the major things that I need to make sure I do to make sure that things go off well. Not only from a programmatic standpoint, because if people don't have fun, that's okay. What really concerns me is if someone gets hurt, right? And having something that could have been prevented. And so building confidence in planning your program starts with safety. And in fact, we actually did some survey on this. We actually, not survey, but we did some research on this a couple years back. And I think we got a slide on it. We did this thing called the secret sauce of scouting. We wanted to find out highly functional packs and troops across the country who had huge numbers of membership, right? They, 60, 80, 100 youth involved in their programs, and they kept that number, right? So they didn't have these roller coasters of membership of lots of kids and then people leaving. People stayed in these programs, and we wanted to find out what were the things that they were doing that could be duplicated to other units, right? If other units did these things, they too would have great success. And to no surprise, the very foundational, this kind of became a hierarchy of needs type of pyramid that units that are really successful have this foundation of safety. Parents feel safe. Leaders are examples of safety. They don't just say, hey, well, those are just stupid rules by the BSA. We're not going to follow them. They really take it seriously, and they make sure that they follow the rules. And now parents see that. And I have a theory that when you are being cavalier about safety, parents notice that. And not every parent is going to stop you in your tracks and say, hey, I don't think we should be doing that, or I don't think that's safe. What they'll do is they'll slowly just walk away from your unit. And you'll have no idea why. So having that foundation of keeping it safe and being safe is important if you want to build a strong scouting program. And so that's where it starts. Now, the great thing is we've developed something super easy. And because we can't help ourselves, we have an acronym.
Of course we do.
Called SAFE, SAFE. And we're going to talk about that. Here's a QR code that will take you to scouting.org website that goes into great detail about SAFE. We're going to hit each of those 4 points today very briefly. But as we do so, I'd love for people to, in the comments, share with us the things that you do that are part of being safe, right? Things that you always make sure that you do and that you're doing well. Share those tips with each other, and making sure that we have this culture of safety, and that safety is a value within our organization and not just something that we do to check a box.
Absolutely. We've got a few shout outs for the top of the show, but like Anthony said, chime in with what your unit is doing in terms of safety. And then if you're hearing something in that SAFE acronym that jogs your memory, comment along. We would love to read throughout the show. Shout out to Wendy. She's being a model viewer. She's tagging a few folks that she thinks should tune in. I love that. That's exactly what we love to see. And shout out to her Pack 38 and Troop 38. We've got some regular viewers in the house. We're international. We've definitely got Omid from Iran. He watches with us very often. And we've got Mustafa from Algeria. Hello, Mustafa. He's liking today's topic. He says safety is important. Now, don't get confused on this. We've got someone from the heart of New England. Not England, New England here in the United States. Hey, Matthew. I'm excited for today's show. What you just said resonates with me, Anthony, because I'm thinking if I have a Cub Scout age kid, I'm not just joining scouting because I think, oh, you know, he or she's going to learn all of these wonderful skills for life and the outdoors. I'm thinking she's or he's going to learn them safely. There's knowledge that I don't have. There are parameters in place to keep kids safe. And, you know, that's part of what draws, I think, new families. So if those aren't in place, if a unit is kind of throwing those to the side, I don't think that that is nearly as appealing.
Well, and now is a good time to also mention that we actually do a really good job with this, right? So I do want to give credit to everyone. And for those who are new, to understand that, you know, when we survey, we do Voice of the Scout survey, and we do that every quarter, and we're asking parents, and we've got thousands of responses back. And over 90% of parents indicate that they feel that their child is safe in the Cub Scout program, right? So that's a great thing, right? That definitely speaks to how important we put safety into everything that we do. But we also want to make sure it's fun, right? So the idea is that safe doesn't, you know, means that we can't have fun, right? We can have fun, but we also want to make sure that we have this great checklist that we're utilizing when we're planning our events and activities. And by doing so, we are really making sure that everyone can have a good time, including the leaders that are responsible for the event, right? When you've got that checklist and you know that you've done those things and that you're doing them correctly, it's a lot easier to enjoy the event than worrying about something that could go wrong. So let's start with the first letter of SAFE, and that is S. And actually we'll talk about the first four, right? So the four letters, the acronym SAFE stands for supervision, assessment, fitness and skill, equipment, and environment. And the idea is that you can take this acronym and apply it to anything that you're doing in scouting. In fact, everything that you're doing in scouting, everything from a den meeting to a pack meeting to an overnighter. Those types of things that as we go through this, you'll see by going through this checklist, the safety checklist, you're going to really reduce the risk that someone's going to get hurt or that someone's not going to have a good time. So let's start with supervision. Now, this means that youth are supervised by qualified and trustworthy adults who set the example for safety. Now, that's real easy to just kind of check the box and say, oh yeah, we have our registered adult leaders. We have our 2 deep leadership. That's not enough. When we talk about supervision, all the adults who are participating need to take ownership and responsibility, right? They need to understand what are the rules, right? And what are we doing, and provide those sets of eyes. Most of the things that happen in scouting could have been prevented if there was proper adult supervision. And what I mean by that is, it's not that they didn't have 2 deep leadership. What they had leadership that wasn't paying attention, right? They just let the kids go out and play, you know, out in the woods, and no one has any oversight, right? No one can see the kids. No one knows where they're at. That is not proper supervision, right? So we want to make sure that when an adult is on a scouting meeting or activity, that they understand that there's a responsibility there to be that extra set of eyes and making sure that we're following the rules, right? And that's what we mean by qualified supervision. Not just the adult leaders that are registered, parents too, right? We want to make sure that parents understand that we need their help to be that extra set of eyes. And if they see something happening that they know is wrong, to intervene, right? And not just passively let things happen. That's what we mean by supervision. And I think we do a great job with this. I think in general, across the board, we do a great job with this. But that's something that if you're not doing, right, it's easy to just kind of check that box. We got the registered leaders, we got 2Deep Leadership. But that extra step is to make sure you're talking to all the adults who are going to be participating, including the parents. This is the expectation. Here are the rules. And here's where we need to make sure we've got those extra set of eyes.
Absolutely. And that's something we often talk about qualified adult supervision in the magazine as well, because in Scout Life, we'll have different crafts and such, and it'll always say, make sure you're working with qualified adult supervision. So I think that's one that we encourage parents to take home with you. That doesn't just need to live at a unit meeting or event. It should live in your home too.
Right. And when we mean qualified, we mean someone who's going to take safety seriously, right? Not someone who's like, oh yeah, we need, we do this at home and so it's fine, or we do this in this other event and that's fine. When in scouting, we've said, no, that's not part of our scouting program, right? There are things that we say you cannot do, and we'll get to that in a little bit. And that isn't a comment on those activities. In other words, that's not a judgment call on if those activities are of value or if kids should be doing those things. No, it just means that those are out of the scope of the scouting program, right? It's kind of like if you join a baseball team, you don't expect to play soccer, right? You don't right. expect to learn how to kick a football, right? It's kind of out of the scope of what the program is about. And so there's things that you can't do in scouting, and that's what that's about. It's that those things have been deemed not part of the scouting program.
Fabulous. A quick shout out to Pack 84 in New Philadelphia, Ohio. A big shout out to Behind the Scenes Brian, who is always dropping valuable links in the comments. We've got a link to our health and safety page on scouting.org, so check that out for sure. We're getting a shout out for the wonderful paintings behind Anthony. And if you guys are liking this campfire for your home, as we like to call it, you can actually use it for yourself. Maybe use it at a unit meeting to keep you on time and have the kids call you out when it's time to end the meeting. It's called Crackling Campfire at Scout Camp, and it's on the Scouting Magazine YouTube. So check that out.
I love that. So share, if those who are watching, share, what you do with your adult leaders and how you prepare your parents when you go on meetings and outings to help engage them so that they are actively part of that supervision, right? Again, it's not just checking a box that we've got a registered leader that's 21 and we've got that, what we have as a definition of a qualified supervision. That goes beyond that. It also means that you're actively engaged and are watchful of what's going on. All right, so the next one, our A, is, I believe, assessment, right? So this is the pre-planning. So this is the part when we talk about building your program with confidence. If you do this assessment, it's not just checking the box of, okay, do we have the camping gear and do we have the right sleeping bags and those types of things. There's other things to look at of what are you going to be doing during your activity, and have we assessed the risk, and have the leaders reviewed the guidelines that we have and the standards that we have, and have verified that what they are wanting to do is not prohibited. Now, you can find on that link on the QR code that we've shown, and we'll show it again throughout the show. The Guide to Safe Scouting is the document online that tells you all the guidelines and things if you're going to be doing something in scouting of what you need to be what you need to have in place, right? So if you're going to do something in aquatics, if you're going to do something outdoors or an overnighter, all those guidelines and all those rules and regulations are laid out in the Guide to Safe Scouting, including a list of things that we have deemed are not appropriate for scouting. Now, the easy part of the assessment is that you know that if it is part of the Cub Scout program, which means it's in a handbook, right? It's in your child's handbook. It's an approved activity, right? And you can do them. We provide plenty of guidance on how to do those things and the how-tos with that. So that's a really easy part of assessing if something is allowed in Cub Scouting. If it's in the handbook, then it's allowed, right? We also want to make sure that we have the risk avoidance or mitigation is incorporated into the activity. So there are times that packs may participate in something that isn't in the handbook. There might be a special event or activity that the council's putting on or is co-hosting with a third party. Maybe the zoo has overnight activities, right? Or maybe there's some other kind of special event. There's a parade, right, that you're going to participate in. We're coming up in that time of year where there's lots of holiday parades. So making sure that during your planning, you're assessing and you're reviewing. The Guide to Safe Scouting tells you the things that you can do when you're participating in a parade, whether you can be on a float and what the requirements are to be on a float. Those types of things are all right there in the Guide to Safe Scouting. And so when you're planning those activities, the A is for assessment. Take the time out before the activity to make sure that you've reviewed the guidelines and that you know the rules before you start playing the game. That's really what assessment is.
And that assessment happens in every level of scouting. It's happening in units. It happens in just about every single meeting I'm in. We're talking about assessing the safety of different activities. And behind the scenes, Brian, another shout out. He just dropped a link in all of the comment spaces to the Guide to Safe Scouting. So check it out.
And bookmark that. If you haven't bookmarked that as a leader right now on your phone and on your laptop, bookmark that. That's always the one source of the truth, is the online version of the Guide to Safe Scouting.
And I guess also one other call out is, don't assume just because you're not seeing an activity listed in the handbook that it's on the table. There are prohibited activities as well, and you can find those in the Guide to Safe Scouting and know what not to do, just avoid it. It's super helpful. Shout out to Cub Scout Pack 1. Hello, California and Nicole. Hey. Shout out to Pack 365 in Nightdale. And shout out to 601. Hello, Todd. Troop 601 in the house. Thanks, you guys, for tuning in. Let us know how you guys treat safety in your unit. What kind of conversations are you having? What tips do you have for other units? We'd love to see and hear those.
Absolutely. Now, on to our F for safe, and that is fitness and skill. Now, we've done, if you're not aware, we do have what we call roundtable videos that we've covered this in roundtable videos. We covered this actually, I believe, in Cub Chat Lives in the past. And this is talking about annual health and medical records. Now, there is an official form that can be found on scouting.org that every participant, that's not just the Cub Scouts, but if there is a mom, a dad, a grandpa, someone who is going to be on that activity, whether, and if it's a hike or an overnighter, right? Or just a standard meeting, right? You want to make sure you have an annual health medical record on file for those individuals who are regularly attending and participating. Now, getting them is one thing. The second part, and the most important part, is to review them. You want to make sure that you are aware, right, that you've got someone who's designated in the unit who handles all the annual health and medical records. Just a quick note. Do not scan them. Do not create electronic versions of these. Just have a hard copy and a 3-ring binder, and that's how they should be maintained with a qualified registered leader in your unit who's been designated to handle those and keep track of them, making sure that everyone has one. Because what you want to do is you want to make sure that you are aware of anyone who may have a condition that could prevent them from participating in an activity, not just the Cub Scouts. And this is really important. We've been through lockdown for several years, and there's a lot of us who haven't been very active during that time. And so now we're getting back out and getting active again, but we may not have built ourselves up to that level to really engage in the type of activities that we might be doing. So, for example, a 5-mile hike may have been nothing for me 3 years ago, but if over the past 2 years I haven't walked at all, that 5 miles might be really difficult. And as I don't like to admit it, but the reality is I'm getting to the age I have to really be heart conscious. I have to be knowledgeable about my numbers and my blood pressure and all those things. Those are important. Knowing your numbers are important, because the last thing I want to happen is, if I'm on a scouting activity as an adult or as a parent, is to have some kind of episode and to have hidden that from the other leaders, right? If I've got a heart condition, or if I become diabetic, or I need to let the leaders who are managing that event know about that. right? And then I also have to have the discipline to know where my limits are, and be aware of that. And so we want to make sure that those annual health and medical records, not only are they collected on each participant, but also that they're being reviewed, and that you are setting the standard for all adults and youth, that they're being honest with anything that's on their medical records. And if any of their condition, if any of their anything changes in their medical history, or currently they're everything from, maybe you're taking some new prescription, again, maybe you've been diagnosed with something, or even maybe you twisted your ankle or broke your foot a couple of months ago, right? That's something to be cautious of, and let other adult leaders know about those things as well.
Yeah, fitness is no joke, because the safety of the Cub Scouts really relies on your ability to be there, be active, be able to participate. And I think a lot of people think like, oh no, this is when I have to find out if I got to shed a pound or two. But it's not just like that. I mean, it's all
No.
kinds of things. It's maybe I can't drive at night and I need to. My vision at night's not great. We need to know that. Maybe you have leaders who are pregnant. Maybe they can't lift as much weight. All kinds of just normal things that we all go through, that it's just good for you to plan ahead.
Those are good examples of things that our body may have changed over the last time we had our annual medical record filled out. And so whenever something changes, we need to make sure that we actively are engaging our adult leadership when we're participating in scanning activity. Say, hey, look, and then sharing that with the adults that are participating. Even if they're not registered leaders, you need to have an annual medical record on them. The good news about those things, doesn't require a doctor's visit, right? This is just kind of a formal note of you saying, this is my medical condition, as I know, right? As I'm aware of right now. And if you haven't, and if you are of that age, and I'd say of that age, I just turned 50 this year. So is making sure you are aware of that you are going to your doctor at least annually, and that you are aware of what your blood pressure is, and that what your heart condition is, and all those things, so that you know for sure that you are physically fit, and that you're going to be able to enjoy that activity. We really want, that's part of the scout law, right? Scout oath and scout law.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that this is a great one. We care about you as a leader as well. Want you to be safe out there and happy.
Yes. And nothing, it's tragic if something happens during any scouting activity that could have been prevented. And not knowing about your health is something that you can do and can prevent, so that you don't overexert yourself on a scouting activity. And in addition to the health and safety of our kids too, right? You want to make sure the Cub Scouts are safe as well, and that you're aware of any conditions that a child may have that needs to be taken into consideration when planning your events and activities. Maybe they're hard of hearing, right? Maybe there's other conditions that need to be aware of, that you talk with their parents about, and knowing how to manage that during an event, activity, or meeting.
You mentioned this too, but a lot of kids need to take like a daily medication. And if that's not listed and the leaders don't know about that, and the kid's asking to take some medicine, you'd be liable to say like, no, I can't have you take that without your parents here. But, well, I guess that wouldn't be an issue necessarily for Cub Scouts. Their parents are there, but it's important to note that kind of thing, just so that the other leaders are aware as well.
Yes, and that there's side effects to it not being taken, right? And that's something that I think we've done articles about and have talked about in the past about, scouting is not the place where you take a break from your medications for anyone, youth or adults, right? If you are on a prescription, you should be taking that and under the guidance of your doctor and the prescription the way it's been prescribed. And taking a break during scouting activities is not an acceptable practice.
That's a great point. It's not like it's a vacation from medication. You've still got to take care of yourself the same way you would at home. It's totally part of safety. So we've talked about supervision, assessment, fitness, and skill is what we just talked about. What are we missing, Anthony?
Equipment and environment. We get double E's. So
Safety.
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 So you want to make sure that when you're doing an event or activity that you have the proper equipment, right? And so we do lots of things in Cub Scouting that are unique and different that scouts, that youth don't get a chance to do in school or in other activities, and that we sometimes have specialized equipment, or we have equipment that you may feel like, oh, that's just, overkill. No, it's not overkill, right? So wearing, for example, safety glasses, right, when you are teaching wolves or bears how to hammer nails, right, or using hand tools, they're still learning their developmental skills. Eye-hand coordination, it's a lot easier for them to slip and make a mistake. We want to make sure they are well protected, but we also want to make sure that when you do have safety equipment, that it's sized correctly. This is something that you want to be very aware of with Cub Scout age youth, because not all safety equipment is one size fits all. Even if it is one size fits all, that's one size fits all adults, not youth. And so you want to make sure that any equipment that is being used is properly sized for Cub Scout age youth. So a good example of this is when you go to a council run activity and they have archery, right? You want to make sure that your younger Cub Scouts, let's say wolves, right, they're not trying to pull back a 80-pound compound bow, right? That's not appropriate. So you want to make sure that their equipment is sized right and it's appropriate so that they can actually enjoy the activity, right? And also be safe about it. You want to make sure that your campsites and trails and any other playing area that you're using is being used properly, but is also safe as well, right? So being aware of your surroundings, making sure that when you go through the campsite, you're aware of any hazards. Tripping hazards are very common at campsites and facilities, and reporting those hazards to the ranger or to the local council, whoever might be responsible for that property, reporting those incidences so that others, right, something can be done about it, and that others can be made aware of those potential hazards as well. And then making sure that you check the gear occasionally, if it's a gear that you use often or even throughout the course of the day, making sure that equipment is still working properly as it should, or still fitting properly, right? Sometimes kids, when they have to wear safety gear, they'll adjust it to a point where it's not doing its job. And so you want to be constantly vigilant to making sure that the gear and equipment is being worn properly throughout the whole activity. And then you want to make sure that you are aware of the environment. Now, to me, the environment is two things, right? One is the environment that you think of, like rain and sun and snow, and what's the outside conditions, and is it likely to change? Having lived here in Texas now for several years, I've learned that if you don't like the weather in Texas, in North Texas, just wait 5 minutes and it'll be dramatically different, right? We woke up to 40-degree weather, and now it's 70 degrees this afternoon. And so weather here changes very quickly, but I knew about that because I watch the weather, right? I make sure I've got my weather app. I've got my Scouting Magazine app that tells me about weather conditions. And so being aware of not only the physical environment, but you also want to make sure that you're aware of the kind of social environment that your pack or den has in Cub Scouting. And what I mean by that, making sure that everyone's living and acting in accordance to the Scout Oath and Scout Law, that safety is valued within your program, and that's the type of environment where people feel safe, right? That emotional safety is very important as well. So when we talk about environment, we're talking about two things. We're talking about making sure that, if it's going to rain, we got rain gear. If it's going to be cold, we got jackets. But also we want to make sure that we have an environment of mental health safety, right? Which is we're all living that and acting by the Scout Oath and Scout Law. We're holding each other accountable to that. So and that we are taking safety seriously, and we're incorporating it in part of our program.
I'm so glad you said that. Mental health is obviously a very, very important thing, and younger kids know about it now. I mean, I think as a kid, I didn't know that term, but younger kids know about it. So giving them that place where they know who they can talk to, they can go to somebody if they're having a rough time. That's really important. As you were saying a few things, so many things came to my mind, but first of all, I was like, helmets, because you're talking about, the adjustment. Kids always push them far back when they're kind of supposed to fit properly. But I also thought, we're talking about what is gear rated for. Helmets are, I think, like such a culprit. There's such a tendency to think like, oh, we've got a horseback riding helmet, we'll use it for biking. These helmets are rated for activities. So kind of like checking into that kind of thing. Scouts are so crafty. So it comes up again with like sleds, especially this time of year. We see like kids going down hills on like garbage can lids and such, when really we say use a real sled, that kind of thing. So just reading the label on things to see what they're actually rated for is a big help.
That's a great point. And in fact, last week, I think it was last week, we had a great show about winter activities. Maybe it was 2 weeks ago. And the tip there about equipment was sleeping bags, right? Our great friend she said, no cartoon characters on sleeping bags, right? She's like, that's my thing, because those aren't rated. That's not the right equipment. So when we talk about equipment, we're not just talking about safety gear, helmets, and maybe gloves, but we're also talking about shoes, and we're talking about camping gear, tents, sleeping bags. When you're doing outdoor activities, making sure that all that equipment, your stoves, your tables, your pop-up tents, all those things are safe. Seats, tables, chairs, all those things, you might be making sure you're checking that equipment on a regular basis, and not using it if it is deemed unsafe.
Yeah, and even the way you set up your campsite, we kind of talked about that. We talked about looking for maybe like natural hazards, but also you don't want to necessarily put a cooler right in the middle of a walking path. Just kind of, or if you see kids trip several times over an item, maybe adjusting that so that doesn't keep happening.
And that's a part of the assessment, right? That's our A, is that, for example, I saw this great thing, because you always talk about, how crafty our Cub Scout leaders can be. I saw one of the greatest things that on an overnight camp out, what's going to happen in the middle of the night? Someone's got to go to the bathroom. Right? Someone's going to eventually have to go to the bathroom, right? And not knowing what the bathroom is, it could be a problem, right? And then the hazard of walking through the environment with limited lighting or no lighting, right? So what they did was they took milk jugs, and they took the little glow sticks, and they stuck it in the milk jugs, filled them with water, and then created a little lighted trail to the bathroom, right? So then that way, not only is it safe for our Cub Scouts, but it's also safe for adults now too, right? Because the adults have to go out in the middle of the night too. And so it really, that was a great example of a pack that really did a good job with assessment. They said, okay, well, what are we going to do in the middle of the night when we have to go to the bathroom and the trail isn't well lit, or, okay, well, how about we light the trail in a fun and easy way, right?
It sounds like a good activity too, making those little path lanterns. I think that's a great idea. Well, guys, if you are watching, keep commenting in. We'd love to. I think we might do like a blog post recap of today's show. So I would love to see all of your ideas, what you guys do. We want to include those comments in our post. This is one of my favorite topics, just because I really think scouting does safety so well. That's
well, and again, we want to emphasize that being safe doesn't mean that you have to eliminate fun, right? In fact, to me, it's just the opposite, right? I can have a lot more fun when I know I am safe, right? That I know that myself, the other leaders, the adults have all had these conversations. We've gone through our safe checklist, and we make sure that everyone who's there is going to be proper, going to provide active, engaged supervision. We're going to do our assessment. We're going to make sure that everyone has the skill level needed to do whatever activity we're going to do. So there's no surprises, right? Again, eliminating the surprises. And we're going to make sure that wherever we're going to do, and if we're going to use any equipment, that it's safe, that it's fits properly, that's going to be used properly, and that our environment is safe, right? I've done that. Okay, now game on. Let's go have some fun, right?
Absolutely. And just remember SAFE, the perfect acronym. Guys, we've got links to the Guide to Safe Scouting in the comments. We've got links to our health and safety page where you can get a lot of good reading. You can actually like select different safety moments, which I love, and read about specific activities or items that you just might think of, especially a lot of stuff related to cold weather. So check that out. I just had to look at one on space heaters myself, and it was very helpful.
And they're quick too, right? They're just a couple minutes long. They're not, they're not an hour and a half about, a certain topic. They really are short and concise, and really sticks to the topic of what's important. So
yeah, they are short. I echo that. Also, guys, we are loving your feedback. You have been rating our episodes each week. We'd love to encourage you to do that again. You can rate this episode by scanning this QR code or going to the URL at the bottom of your screen. You can pull out your smartphone, open the camera app, focus on that QR code, tap it, and there should be a URL that pops up. Tap into that. Just give us some quick feedback so we can continue to make these shows the very best that they can be. Anthony, are we missing anything?
No, we love that feedback. And even if you're not watching live, right? If you're watching this as a recording, please click on that QR code, give us a little feedback so that we can continually improve the show.
It's been a good one. If you are watching right now, tag somebody who could view this show, who could use a view on our SAFE acronym and safety for units. You can watch past episodes of Cub Chat Live at scoutingmagazine.org/CubChatLive. We'll be back next Friday at 2 p.m. Central. And until then, I'm just going to keep thinking safety. Bye, Anthony.